Hi, Mark here from Success with Options. I know for some of you who have subscribed to the YouTube channel, it's been a while since I posted anything, and so it's high time I put something out. Also, as I promised in my last newsletter, I was going to provide a video of my desktop setup. Now, I know there's a lot of different ways that people can set up a desktop, and you may find that you have your own preferred setup, but I've been asked from time to time from various folks how I set my desktop up, and so I want to just take a few minutes and go through the various aspects of my setup, show you how some different pieces are set up, and then I want to show you a neat little trick that I recently discovered on how to do a little bit of probability analysis on your trades. So I'll conclude with that at the end. So I really want to focus on three different areas of my desktop setup. One of them is my main dashboard, which is what we're looking at here. So the main dashboard is really just your Thinkorswim platform. It's the main, call it the monitor page or whatever. That I typically always have up, and I have it up for a couple of different reasons. One is it shows me my current positions. And as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, what I'm specifically showing here is my overall position Greeks. And I do pay attention to that a fair amount. And as you can see here, we don't really know without expanding the tabs what's actually found in here. But you can see we have a lot of negative delta. Based on the fact that we have a fair amount of negative delta, can you guess possibly what I might have in my position? That's right, you've guessed it. I've got a lot of call spreads. Now that might seem kind of strange, but that's just where I'm at the moment in terms of my my current outlook. I'll come back and talk about that when I get to my charts. But what this tells me is that I have a somewhat negative bias, right, in terms of my portfolio. It also tells me my gamma and my theta, gamma being the kind of the rate of change of delta, and theta being my burn rate per day, so my melt off rate, if you want to think about that. So $6 a day in essence in accumulated theta is being burnt off. Now, those of you that know about the Greeks might be asking, so where's the Vega? And the truth is I could add Vega to this dashboard, but I don't actually pay a whole lot of attention to Vega. I don't really use Vega risk or any kind of Vega number in terms of my information. So I tend to want to keep information I don't really care too much about out of my dashboard. Now, the other thing I have up, and these are just standard things that are available, are quantity, and this would be quantity of options, number of days till expiration, and the mark. Those won't be too interesting at the portfolio level, but when you expand these, I do pay a lot of attention to the days to expiration. And so as the days to expiration start lowering, I start paying attention and thinking about whether I want to stay in the trade or get out of the trade. And certainly, as I mentioned in all of my my option trade strategies, I'm looking to get out of my trades around 3 to 4 days before expiration. So really the week of expiration, which always happens on a Friday, regardless of what option cycle. So you might be wondering how we get some of these different settings that are on here. As I mentioned, the quantity, days, and mark are kind of part of the standard dashboard, if you will. By the way, the Thinkorswim platform kind of, if you noticed, has gone through a bit of a facelift within the recent couple of weeks, and that sort of forced me to go back and reset up my desktop because there were a number of things that were a little different from the way they were. The major setup for the desktop is going to be up here in this top setup button. You can go in and change your application settings, and in particular where you're going to find yourself going is your look and feel. So you can change the color, you can change font size. Spacing was one of the big things. There was kind of a roomy spacing, which was the default. I didn't really care for that a whole lot, so I went back to normal. I haven't really made myself go to tight. I think the spacing is maybe a little looser than it was before, but I'm kind of okay with that, I guess. But just mention that in case you got caught by surprise and we're trying to figure out how to get back to the kind of an original look and feel. The actual area we're going to modify, though, is this little gear right here. This affects what you see on the dashboard over here. So what you'll do is pop up that gear, and you'll notice my current set right here is the 5 or so 6 things that I have that are showing on the dashboard. And It's really as simple as going in and deleting the things that you don't want. So select something and hit remove item, or going over to the left hand side and finding something that you do want and adding it, and then you can basically move them up down. You can use the move up and down, but I've actually found that you can, if you like, you can just drag them and drop them. There's kind of some new features with that. So that's essentially how you change the look and feel. So that's pretty much my dashboard. Now we can see I've got some working orders, and those are just outstanding orders to close my current positions. And so I don't normally keep that open, only because I'm not that interested. I'll pop them open when I need to view it. I'm going to come back to this dashboard in a little bit, but I want to jump to the next chart that I look at. Now I really am the other part of my desktop setup, and I have a multiple monitor setup. So you're going to see these all as one single window. But in reality, I have some of these spread across multiple monitors. So I always have this dashboard up, and then in my second monitor, I have a couple of different things visible. And not that they're all visible 100% all the time, but I have access to them, and I'm routinely switching back and forth between them. So I'm going to show you two different sets of charts. One is kind of a what I call a short-term view, which is the futures view. And in that, I'm looking at about the last 5 days in 15-minute bars. So I'm kind of looking at what the market is doing moment by moment in the day. And then my other view is more of a long-term yearly chart with daily bars. And I'm looking at the indices, the SPX, the DJX, and the Russell and the VIX to see kind of what's going on with those. So those kind of give me my short-term and long-term perspective. And I use a lot of those. And I mentioned this in the newsletter. I'm going to go into a little more detail in this little session. So the first thing I want to show you is the short-term view. That is my futures view. The other thing I'm going to mention here, and I'll explain my rationale in just a minute, is that I'm using within Thinkorswim, there are actually two different charting tools that are available. There are the TOS charts, as they call them, the historical charts that were part of Thinkorswim from the beginning, and then what's referred to as the profit charts, which is another charting tool. They each have strengths, I would say, and characteristics that make them suitable for the kind of thing I'm trying to do. So I'll kind of explain why I chose them, and you could certainly choose to do all of your charting in one tool or another. For me personally, it just works out this way that I kind of prefer to use one versus the other, and so both of them for different things, I would say. So again, your mileage may vary. You may choose to use one charting tool or the other, and that's fine too. But I'll just kind of talk you through some of these things. Okay, here is my my short-term charts. These are my futures, and I've used a kind of a grid chart mechanism that's supported in the TOS charts, and I'll show you how to set those up in a minute. But I just want to point out that what I'm watching are futures, three different futures: the ES, which is the SPX futures, the TF/TF, which is the Russell 2000 futures, and then /YM, which is the Dow futures. So one of the reasons why I like using this charting tool is because it just allows me to specify them. I don't have to specify which futures chart I'm watching. It's always going to be watching the current, kind of which one is considered the current chart. So I don't have to keep updating them. That's one of the reasons why I like using the TOS charts in this particular case. So all you have to do is type in /ES/TF and /YM. If I was doing this in the profit charts, I would actually have to know the exact chart, and every time that chart expired and went to the next cycle, I would have to update all my charts. So I find it easier to use the TOS charts. Let me just show you really quick how you set up these charts. So the simplest way to do this is to go back to the, well, let me just show you here, and then I'll show you how to set it up from scratch. So up in this far right-hand corner over here, you'll see a little pull down that represents the charting, the grid chart functionality. The way the TOS charts are set up is very, very flexible. So if I had a really big screen, I could actually pop up a whole bunch of charts. So here I have like a 4x4, so 16 different charts I could put up if I wanted to see all of the charts. I have absolutely no reason to do such a thing personally, so I don't. But what I do have set up is I have a stacked one column by 3 row chart, and that allows me to get a setup like this. So all you do is start with a basic chart, switch over here, turn on the 3-chart mechanism, and then type in the various symbols. And then the nice thing is that once you get that, you can actually save that grid. And so I have a standard grid that's called my my futures grid. Okay, so the futures grid is what I'm looking at right here. So let me show you from scratch how you might do that. Let's go back to the main desktop. So if we go over to the Charts tab, and you'll notice that you have a choice between Charts, which is toss charts, Profit, which is the profit charts, and then something called Flexible Grid. I personally don't use that a whole lot. There may be folks that like to look at those sorts of things. I don't. I'm using either the toss charts or the profit charts. So right here, we already have the toss chart set up. The first thing I'll normally do when I start is I will detach the chart so that I can have my dashboard up and my chart as a separate window, and I can drag that around and put it wherever I want. So what I'll do is go over here and detach. Okay, so the way that you set up this chart is we'll start by going over here to the grid chart tool, and we will grab the 3 stacked, and now we have our 3 chart area. So we'll enter in our tools, ES for the S&P, /TF for the Russell, and /YM for the Dow. Now you'll notice right away that this does not look like what I had earlier, and the reason is we've got to change our time frames. So we'll go to the 15-minute 5-day for each of these. And there's actually probably an easier way to do this if you set the chart up ahead of time and then switch to the 3-chart mode. Then you only have to set this up once, so we'll kind of duplicate this effort. All right, so we're getting pretty close, right? And if you zoom in, you can see the 15-minute bars for the last day or so. And if you zoom all the way out, you'll see all 5 days, and it'll mark the highs and the lows of that period and so forth. Now, the one thing you may or may not want on here is you may not want to see the volume bar. They kind of overlay the volume bar. So if you're interested in volume, that's great. You can go ahead and keep that up. And sometimes that's interesting to see where the buying volume is stacked up during the day. But I tend to not like that. So I'll go over to the chart settings. And because we're looking at futures, we'll go over to the futures bar and uncheck the volume subgraph. And of course, that's going to require me to change it on every one of these guys. So we'll uncheck that. And this guy, futures, we'll uncheck that. And now we have a chart. Okay, so now once you get it the way you want to be sure and save it, right? So we'll go back over to this pull down and save grid as, and then we'll enter in a grid name. Since I've already got that set up, I'm not going to save it, but you can go ahead and save it under your favorite name. And again, if you don't like this setup, if you like some other setup, perfectly fine. Go ahead and set up your charts, and then what you'll do is just save it the way you want it, and you can always bring it back. It's one of the nice things about this kind of a setup. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that. And the next chart that I want to show you is the longer term chart, and so we'll switch to the profit chart, and I'll show you what I have set up for my longer term. Okay, here we have the longer term chart, and you can see I have the Russell, the SPX, the DJX, which is the Dow, and the VIX. So this kind of mirrors what I have for my future. So on one hand, I have a very short term set of charts where I'm measuring 15-minute bars over a current day, and so I'm seeing the various fluctuations on the day, and I will be jumping back and forth and showing you some of the differences between them. So I'm not done with those charts in case you had questions about those. What we're looking at here is kind of the yearly view. And so you can see one of the things I do is I draw in a lot of trends, and I'm monitoring trends, both the long-term trends, whether they're uptrends or downtrends. Earlier in the year, I had a nice kind of a long up-running channel that I was showing, and it was working really great until we had this little bump in August, and then we had kind of that flat to down September, and now we're kind of trending back up here. So the question is, where are we at? So I'm going to show you how all of these come together and why I tend to use these charts in conjunction when I'm setting up my trades. Before we get into that, I want to actually show you how to build your own grid chart in the TOS chart. So we'll go back over to the Charts tab, and actually this time we're going to switch to Profit. And you'll see it's going to go ahead and initialize, and I don't recall if it initializes with the last default or something like that, but while it's doing that, I'll just simply detach. Yeah, it's the last chart I had up. So I'll just simply detach it. And again, we'll just make this a little bit bigger here. And then the next thing I do is I go to this grid charts. Now, grid charts on the profit charts aren't quite as flexible. They have 2x1 and 2x2. 2x2 is fine. And then I've got this set up. Now, by default, it's just going to replicate those in all 4 cases. And then what I can do is go in and set them up the way I want. So I'll just put a couple down. Typically put the Russell there. And the SPX there. And I'll just kind of leave that. Now, you certainly have the flexibility of adding a bunch of charts. And actually, one of the reasons I like the profit charts is simply because of the way that the charts end up working, or I would say the studies, not the charts, but the studies, I tend to like them a lot better. So overall, while I tend to use the TOS charts for the simple grid charts like I showed for the short-term durations, I actually like the profit charts, I guess because I've been using them longer, but I just like overall, I like how they work and how they feel, and I'm kind of used to that. So it's not so much that one is better than the other, it's more a matter of what I'm used to, and so I tend to prefer them. One of the things that you may want to do, and I actually prefer to do, is on these guys, I tend to not have a whole lot of the studies. So what I'll do is I'll go into each one of these guys and go into the edit study sets and just get rid of some of this junk. Okay, so now we see that it's a lot simpler. Again, it's up to you what you tend to have on your charts. I like to have a set of moving averages. So I tend to keep my grid chart pretty simple, and that is I have it boiled down to a 20-day, a 30-day, and a 200-day. Actually, in this one, I've got a 30-day, 50-day, and a 200-day. Again, it's probably really an issue of which moving average studies you like to use. I like to have a couple of different time periods up just to help me kind of evaluate different time periods, and the 200-day moving average often gives me kind of a longer term perspective, and you'll find that a lot of times, like for example right in here, the market seems to respect that position from time to time, and so both for support and resistance we see that support held here, so we may find that we'll see some resistance over on this side when we get to kind of some more rallying on the market and things like that. So that's kind of my rationale for having these guys up. Now, the other thing you may not like is you may not like all this stuff on the left-hand side. You want that real estate freed up, so you can just click on that that little chart right there, or that little button, and it'll close that. I think interestingly, when the charts first came out, or when the updates to the platform came out here a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like those buttons were gone for a long time. For a couple of weeks, I couldn't seem to close the panel, but all of a sudden this week, I noticed that feature showed up. So I don't know what happened there, but seems like that's now functional. I don't know if it was just restarting the platform that solved that problem or what, but I'm really happy to see that, because I tend to like a fairly clean set of charts, and I like to just be able to look at them and not be distracted by all of the other stuff. So anyway, that is how you set up the profit charts to do a similar thing with grid charting. Again, one of the things that you can do is go ahead and save your charts, and you'll save grid style. Now, grid style allows you to save the grid and the studies, and you'll tend to want to do that. And so you'll want to save the studies, and then give it a name. Or if you want to overwrite an existing study, you can do that as well. So the functionality is fairly similar. It's just that the profit charts tend to not give you as much flexibility in how you lay out your grids. I tend to be pretty happy with the layout. So I have a set of these charts that I keep up, and that really gives me that perspective on the market. I've actually recently added another chart that's a set of 4 charts that are just some other things that I like to watch, such as the GLD, which is the gold, the euro versus the US dollar, so kind of a currency, and maybe a particular stock I want to watch or something like that. So I've kind of created another one. And you can do as many of these as you want, by the way. You can pop these guys up. And again, once you have a predefined chart, it's really just as easy as doing something like this. So you pop it up, and then you say, I want to switch to the the indices grid chart, and lo and behold, you're all set up. So once you get them set up, they're really nice because it's just very easy to recover them. So if you ever, for some reason, close the window and you want to get back to what you had, it's pretty easy to get set up for that. So here I kind of have the big picture view, and I'm looking at the market and I'm making decisions about what I'm going to do in a trade. So am I long or am I short? So at first glance, you might look at this and say, my gosh, I'm going to be long. I want to be long because I can see that this trend is up. And furthermore, if you zoom in, you can see that on Friday, and I'm recording this on a Saturday, so the market's closed. On Friday, we actually reached up and touched above the this level right here. I think on the SPX it actually was a move above, or on the SPY, the ETF, it actually was above, and I made some decisions regarding that. Now, two ways to look at this, right? One is we're bullish, let's buy. The other is maybe we ought to be a little more cautious. Maybe we're going to see a round of selling. We have a pretty strong uptrend here, right? Where we've kind of snapped back, and you can see that that's come off of a double bottom. If you kind of back out a little bit, most of these have some form of a double bottom, maybe not a 100% even double bottom, but I have to ask myself a little bit, what are the odds that the market is running out of steam a little bit? All right, so long-term versus short-term. So if I'm in a trading day and I'm looking at something like this, one of the things that I often do is I like to jump back to the other chart that I have. And I'm usually a little bit closer in my time frame, so sometimes I'll back out and I'll look at the trend over the 5 days, but I really use the 15-minute chart to see what's going on during the day. So at any given point in the day, and we can see here, let's see, the market opened on Friday right here. Okay, so let's just zoom into this window because this is our trading day. So if I was in a bearish bias, I might start looking at something like this and see, okay, so we came up at the beginning of the day, we bumped up to a level, and then we started selling. And then we came up to that same level and we sold again. So maybe somewhere in this level, I might have picked this to time during the day. So is this going to give you any kind of guarantees? No. Will it give you somewhat of a better fill? Yeah, you can sometimes gain a few pennies on a trade, which over time adds up, right? So if I'm selling, for example, a call vertical spread, if I can sell that spread for 57 cents instead of 55 cents, that's actually $2 per contract that I sell. So that's kind of my rationale for that is I like to, whenever possible, see if I can eke out a few more pennies on the trade. Does that stop me from making a trade if I was trading at the bottom of this channel? No, not necessarily. But if I can, I like to use the short-term charts to see if I can find an optimal place to get an entry or an exit. So I'm typically using these guys right here to make my decision. So I might look at this and decide, well, I want to sell a call spread on the SPX, or I want to sell a call spread on, well, maybe the IWM, okay, or the Russell. Well, the problem is that those don't. You can trade options on those, but they tend to be a slightly different instrument. So you have to be very careful about trading them without knowing what you're getting into. So I tend to prefer, as many of you know, to trade the ETF equivalent. So once I get my decisions about what I'm interested in trading, I will often switch to a single chart on an ETF. So here's an example of the SPY I've got brought up. And of course, I've got some charts. Let me just get rid of this, this chart here. And as I mentioned, it did bump above right here. We do see a little bit of a bump above. Right here, we're kind of right at the top here. So we could have a double top. I kind of doubt it, but we might see a pullback considering the strong buying. And so that's what might make me think about doing some kind of a selling where maybe I sell over the top of the 200-day moving average. So I've now jumped from the SPX where I made my initial decision to the SPY, and I compare them because sometimes they're not exactly the same. And so this is where I would be led to make a decision and see if I can find a trade where maybe I can sell a call spread that's above the 200-day moving average. And so I'll just show you really quick. We're going to jump back over to the dashboard and set up a trade. And so we'll go to the trade tab, type in SPY. Whoops, got to type it right. Type in the SPY. And of course, we're on the weekend, so we're not going to get probably the most accurate pricing. But if I was to just kind of go in here and look, I could look at the November, the first weeklies of the November cycle, or the second weeklies if you like a little more time. Let's just do that one because it'll be a little bit cleaner. And let's find an optimal price. So most of you know I'm looking at somewhere around a 65 to 70% probability of success. So if I go with 68 right here, I can do, and I'm going to use this tip that was suggested. So not this newsletter, but the newsletter before. I posted a tip from somebody where they showed how to set up a trade by holding the control key down. So if I hold the control key down here and click on the sell, so I got 68. So I go sell. There we go. And then I got my other position, which I've got a 205, so I want to go 207, so I'll go buy here. Oops. There we go. We have our trade set up. So here's my vertical spread. I am selling at 205, 207, and it's offering 73. Well, that's pretty high. That's actually pretty good. But if you remember right, we were looking at an area somewhat like that. So I've got a couple of things that I can consider. 73 is pretty high, as most of you know, for a vertical spread. So I might go back to my SPY chart and just kind of look at right here and decide, okay, is 205 acceptable? Well, 205 is actually above the 200-day moving average. So if I think that the 200-day moving average is going to be a good area of resistance, then that might be a good choice for me to pick. So all I'm saying is that it's nice to have those things sort of corroborate each other. But I have some flexibility. That gives me more confidence to sort of stand on that 205 level for my short strike. So I might set that trade up and go ahead and run it. The other thing I might do then is I might monitor and use the 200-day moving average as my trigger to get out. So maybe something above the 200-day moving average. If I close above that, that might be an indicator that I'm wrong. So that's kind of my overall setup, and that pretty much concludes the intent of this section. And I see by looking at this the time that we've gone kind of long. So what I'm going to do is I'll record the second section as a separate video, and I'll put that together. And I want to show you a neat little new tool that you can use on your toss charts to do probability analysis. And it'll be probably a lot shorter than this, but you'll find it hopefully pretty interesting if you don't already know about it. Thanks for watching this video and for visiting my YouTube channel. I know for some of you it's been a while, and thank you for being patient. I'll try and post some more videos coming up in the future as I think of some new things that might be interesting for you guys to learn about. I'll go ahead and post them on the website. In the meantime, be sure and visit our Success with Options website, where you'll find lots of information, some of the strategies that I talked about, such as the vertical spread and so forth. There'll be information on technical analysis, options broker reviews, and things like that. So be sure and visit the website. And if you aren't already subscribed to the newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter as well, where you'll get monthly updates on option trading strategies, answer to your questions, and all sorts of things like that. And so with that, I'll just wish you happy trading and see you down the road at the next video.